Aerodynamic excellence, streaking along at speeds of more than 200 kilometers per hour. In the 90s, intercity express trains traveled more than 1 billion kilometers backwards and forwards across Germany. 7 years of service without serious accident. Until the 3rd of June 1998. Just outside the small town of Eschede, ICE train number 884 met disaster. In just 5 seconds, it came off the rails and smashed into a concrete bridge. 101 people were killed, 105 more injured. Somewhere, hidden in the train's crumpled remains, lay the clues to what had caused one of the worst rail disasters in history. The town of Eschede in northern Germany. Population 4,000. Set in a national park, it's a quiet place where not much happens. Such a small dot on the map, intercity express trains usually whip through without stopping.
In general, the pace is a bit quieter and slower. The hectic life is unknown around here.
Andreas Effinghausen, a local policeman, has patrolled the area for years. On the morning of the 3rd of June 1998, Effinghausen started work earlier than usual.
The 3rd of June is my daughter's birthday, so that's why I took the early shift that day, so I would be free in the afternoon. I went to work in the morning, together with my partner on regular patrol duty.
That regular patrol would become one of the most irregular in his career. And this peaceful German town would lose its anonymity, forever to be associated with the train crash and the dreadful loss of life. 10:30. The train pulled into Hanover Station, 50 kilometers southwest of Eschede. This was the last scheduled stop before its final destination, Hamburg. 30-year-old Udo Bausch, a businessman, was heading to Hamburg for a meeting. He had a lot on his mind.
My wife took me to the train that day, which was unusual. I got in, looked for a single compartment in order to be able to prepare myself for the meeting. I found a single compartment so I could work on the train, sat down and opened my laptop.
10:33. Intercity express train number 884 pulled out of Hanover Station. Once outside the city limits, it accelerated to 200 kilometers per hour. Near the town of Celle, the engineer had to cut his speed to 90 kilometers per hour because of maintenance work on the tracks. At the front of the train, in carriage number 1, Sigrid Schubert was on her way to the seaside, looking forward to a holiday with her child Andre and her boyfriend, Jörg Dietmann.
We were just settling down to sleep for a bit. We took off our shoes to be more comfortable. Andre was sitting beside the window, Jörg across from me.
A couple of minutes before 11. Suddenly, a loud noise startled the passengers at the front of the train.
All of a sudden, there was a huge explosion. I thought a bomb had exploded.
It was an incredible sound, like a plane breaking through the sound barrier. It was right beside my ear.
The train began to rattle and shake.
Then the floor split open below us. I don't know exactly what it was, but something came shooting through the floor.
We looked at each other, horrified. I was saying to myself, wow, this is incredible. This is not good. And then I said to Sigrid and Andre, come on, let's get out of here.
Sigrid and Andre could hardly keep their balance. They crawled back to carriage number 2 and huddled on the floor.
And then I ran to the back, to the next carriage, and was looking for the conductor. It was in the third carriage that I found him. As I was running, the carriages had started to skid and rattle. I told the conductor something serious has happened in the front.
Amazingly, passengers towards the rear of the train didn't feel those first signs of trouble. Udo Bausch continued his work. No one could have known, but disaster was just moments away. As Germany's intercity express train number 884 sped towards the small northern town of Eschede, the front carriages began to rattle and shake violently. But passengers at the rear of the train remained oblivious to the impending disaster.
Back in carriage number 12, I didn't really notice the rattling noise, as was reported by other passengers. Maybe because I was so engrossed in my work, I didn't really take it seriously.
The train was approaching an underpass, a road on the outskirts of Eschede. Jörg Dietmann had just made it back to carriage number 1, the conductor in tow.
When we arrived at our compartment, and when I wanted to point to what had happened, there was a huge bang, a boom.
It was so big. At first we thought we had collided with another train. And then everything happened very fast.
Then I saw a bright light and I was thinking, Jörg, your look has simply run out.
The time was 10:59.
Within seconds, I was hurled around in the train compartment from left to right, from up to down.
In Eschede, people heard the crash. "12 kilometers away, Officer Andreas Effenhausen got an urgent call.
We got orders to go to Eschede because the train had derailed there. We were to go there to evaluate the situation and report back.
Officer Effenhausen was among the first to arrive at the crash site.
And I saw this train there, pushed together, crushed, all these pieces. At first, I was completely devastated. What struck me was this terrible silence. There were no sounds, total quiet, not a bird chirping, nothing that can normally be heard at this time of year. You can only describe it as deathly quiet.
Inside carriage number 1, Jörg and the conductor could not believe they were still alive.
I immediately looked back to see if the second carriage was still there. And then I could see that it was slanted, and then I saw Sigrid and Andre, and then I asked them if they were okay and got them out of the carriage.
In what remained of carriage number 12, Udo Bausch was not so lucky. He lay crushed in the wreckage.
I could tell that I must be badly hurt, that I must have broken a lot of bones, because I could feel a lot of pain, especially on my left side. So I knew I must be really injured on that side, and in this situation, you are terribly afraid.
News of the accident spread quickly. Matthias Stahlmann, a local pastor, got word that his help was urgently needed.
Und dann beschrieb mir der Funksprecher oben.
The dispatcher then described to me that there was a train that had crashed into a bridge, that a car had been obstructing the track. They were thinking about 20 dead.
In fact, 96 passengers had been killed instantly in the crash. And many more were struggling for their lives.
At that moment, I was terrified. I thought I would never get out of there, that my whole life was destroyed. My family entered my mind immediately, my wife, my children, that I wouldn't be able to return home.
Officer Effenhausen began to hunt through the wreckage. Still badly shaken, he knew what he had to do.
Bin dann mehr so aus dem Antrieb raus einfach losgegangen.
Instinctively, I started moving, walked around the train and came to a spot where I just started calling, "Hello."
Hallo? Warum ich das
I don't know why I said that.
He worked his way through the wreckage around carriage number 12. It seemed impossible that anyone could have survived such devastation. But Effenhausen called out in the eerie silence.
At some point, I heard the voice of my lifesaver, Andreas. I reacted immediately and called, "Hello, hello, I'm here. My name is Udo Bauch. Can you please help me?" I was so afraid of dying. I was ecstatic to hear his voice.
Ging das dann im Einzelnen los. Und
That's
dann
when I started moving.
aktiv, das
It
war
was
so
like a
ein
wake-up call, and I could take action.
Und dann konnte ich auch was tun.
Now I was
und
able
ab da
to
hat es
start
dann
doing
alles
things.
automatisiert abgespielt.
Effenhausen rushed to get a rescue team to carriage 12. But with so much wreckage scattered over such a large area, every step was a challenge. Nothing could prepare the rescuers for the scene that lay before them.
So mein erster Gedanke.
My first thought actually was, it can't be real. This is staged. They are doing a catastrophe training. This can't be. The next thought crossing your mind then is, but who would ruin an entire ICE train? It must be real.
Every emergency worker in the region was ordered to report to Eschede. But the main bridge was down, and all the roads were jammed. And that meant another group of people were having trouble getting to the site. The accident investigators.
The first problem the investigating team from Hannover encountered was the traffic jam.
Mark Viller from Germany's Federal Department of Railways remembers just how difficult it was to get the investigators to the crash site in the hours following the accident.
The rescue forces, fire trucks and ambulances, all these services already had made their way there. So we dispatched a second team from Hamburg. They got to the site by helicopter.
The utter destruction of the crash site presented many difficult questions for investigators. Emergency crews had discovered a car beneath the train wreckage. Had it caused the accident? Or had something else caused Intercity Express train 884 to come off its tracks? Had there been something on the line? Could it have been a problem with the bridge? Or was there a deadly flaw in the train itself? As a precaution, 60 Intercity Express trains were taken out of service for inspection. For all remaining trains, speed limits were drastically reduced. Investigators were under intense pressure to come up with answers so that Germany could restore its train service and the faith of a horrified public.
You question eyewitnesses to try to get a picture of what has happened.
Engineer Gunnar Bosse was hired to investigate the accident on behalf of the state attorney. He knows from experience that analyzing a wreckage site is a long and painstaking process.
Man geht an die Aufzeichnungen im Triebfahrzeug.
You have to check the design of the engine drive.
Die Lage der
You have to note exactly what position the carriages are in. You have to check out both the direction the train was going and the direction it was coming from, looking for anything that could have caused the accident.
The media were in Eschede as soon as they heard about the crash. The site was overrun with reporters and camera crews.
Nobody wanted to believe it.
Claudia Beppler-Kanaka is a German television reporter who covered the story.
Disbelief, really, spread all over Germany.
Within hours, the accident was making headlines all around the world. On the other side of the Atlantic, the tragedy caught the attention of Bob Laube at the National Transportation and Safety Board in Washington, D.C. The United States was in the process of starting up its own high-speed rail service. If there were lessons to be learned from Eschede, transportation officials from the US and across the globe wanted to draw from them.
Okay. I'll be there as soon as I can.
Laube and a team boarded a plane to Germany to see what information they could gather.
It affected everybody in the high-speed rail industry because high-speed rail up to that point had been so safe.
Back at the accident site, in the race to get the first news reports out, journalists speculated that a car found demolished beneath the wreckage had somehow played a role.
Today's disaster started with a car going through the bridge's flimsy railing and crashing on its side onto the line. Within moments, it was hit by the train going at 200 kilometers an hour.
But would investigators find evidence that supported the theory?
The evidence will only last so long. It's perishable. As rescue operations are going on, as wreckage is cleared, things will change and evidence can be lost.
At the site, the chances of disturbing the evidence were growing. Almost 2,000 people had joined the rescue effort. Inside the demolished carriages, rescuers saw things too terrible to imagine. Bodies mangled and dismembered on impact.
Leichen abgedeckt, die oben schon.
The bodies were covered, and we were asked by firemen to say a brief prayer and give a blessing.
With so much devastation, it was miraculous that anyone had survived at all. Trapped beneath the shattered shell of carriage number 12, rescuers worked tirelessly to free Udo Bausch.
Und dann kann ich mich erinnern, wie dann ein Arzt oder ein Pflege...
And then I remember a doctor or a paramedic giving me a needle because of the severe pain.
Aufgrund der starken Schmerzen. Und dann hatte ich aufgrund dieser Nebenwirkung...
And as a side effect of the painkiller, my breathing stopped.
Udo was near death, but rescuers still couldn't get him out. In order to free him, they first had to cut open the roof of the carriage. But Udo had fallen into a coma, and there wasn't much time. His skull was broken in 2 places, his jaw in 4. He had shattered bones in his face and shoulder, and was losing massive amounts of blood from a wound in his leg. Finally, rescuers were able to pull him from the wreck, and a helicopter flew him to hospital. Doctors struggled to stop the bleeding in his brain. They had to remove a 10-centimeter piece of skull in order to relieve the pressure. It was the first of many operations needed to save Udo Bausch. By 1:30 that afternoon, just 2.5 hours after the fatal crash, most of the injured had been taken to hospitals across northern Germany. For the investigators, there was one small mercy. The accident site was divided into 2 distinct parts by the demolished bridge.
We were lucky because the investigators could go into areas where no rescue action was taking place. That is, the areas in front of the bridge and ahead of the accident scene.
In front of the bridge lay the first 4 carriages, the ones that had made it through before the bridge collapsed. Carriages 1 and 2 were derailed, but sitting on the track. There was some damage, including a broken wheel on carriage number 1. Carriage number 3 was in worse shape. It looked like it had hit something before it came to a stop. And carriage number 4 had left the track altogether.
The fourth car passed under the bridge, then drove to the right, out into the field, tumbled over and came to a rest diagonal to the track.
The lead locomotive that had been pulling the train was nowhere in sight. That's because it had been automatically decoupled from the rest of the train, travelled by itself for more than a kilometre, and finally came to a stop past Eschede station. That lead locomotive provided investigators with a key clue.
We could see that the engine, that is, the locomotive at the front of the train, was undamaged.
The fact that the engine wasn't damaged proved that there couldn't have been a car in the path of the oncoming locomotive. But there was a vehicle under the wreckage. So how did it get there? Investigators were surprised to discover that the car belonged to railway maintenance men. They'd been working near the bridge when the train had come through. Their vehicle had been parked beside the track. The car investigators had discovered under the wreckage. In fact, the car had nothing to do with the accident. It had been in the wrong place at the wrong time and got swept up in the derailment. One mystery solved, but there were others. Had the underpass somehow caused the accident? The last 7 carriages and the rear locomotive had ploughed right into the bridge's pillars. But it was near the front of the train, in the cars that made it through the underpass, that investigators found their first solid clue. An 8-metre long piece of track shooting straight through the floor. High-speed trains have revolutionized travel. It started with Japan's sleek bullet on wheels, introduced in 1964. 17 years later, France took the next step, introducing the TGV. It proved that trains could lure passengers away from planes, at least from short-haul flights. Today's high-speed trains regularly exceed 200 kilometers per hour, and in testing, have reached a breathtaking 500 kilometers per hour. Passengers' only questions are how fast can I get there, and what does it cost? Until the 3rd of June 1998, not many travellers considered the true cost of speed. The crash of ICE train number 884 outside the small German town of Eschede made the high price clear. The faster the speed, the more violent the impact, and the greater the human toll. Within hours of the accident, rescue workers had freed the last survivors and recovered 101 bodies. Special cranes were called in to remove what remained of the train. The accident investigators were making progress. They'd discovered an 8-metre-long piece of rail, part of a guardrail, piercing through the front of the train.
Half of the guardrail went from the bottom of the first car all the way through the car, up through the roof. The second piece of guardrail that broke off skewered the first 2 cars together and traveled actually right through the passenger vestibule that connects the 2 cars and embedded itself in the frame of the second car.
How had a piece of track broken off and speared through 2 carriages?
It could not have arrived there as a result of the train leaving the track. Something must have happened before that.
And there was something else to explore. On the stretch of track leading up to the bridge, investigators came across some bizarre markings on the concrete sleepers. They tracked the marks back in the direction from which the train had come. They started 5.5 kilometers before the accident site. And scattered nearby, investigators found small pieces of debris.
The parts from the undercarriage consisted of pieces that were 5 to 10 centimeters in size, covered with plastic and metal.
They also found tiny chunks of rubber material, more important evidence. In 1998, Germany's ICE trains were using rubber components in their wheels. But what did this find mean? Investigators were finally able to make a crucial connection. The bits of rubber were linked to something they'd spotted earlier at the accident site, something they'd noticed on carriage number 1. On its rear swivel assembly was a broken wheel. It was a major breakthrough.
The train was coming from Hannover on the left track here. About 5.5 kilometers before the bridge, the wheel on the left bogie of the first carriage broke.
The brake was in the rim, the outside layer of the wheel, the part that comes into contact with the track. The broken rim had separated from the inner part of the wheel and got caught under the train. That explains what passengers in carriage 1 had heard just before the crash.
There was this terrible, crazy bang exactly under the armrest of Sigrid and André.
They hadn't realized it at the time, but the loud bang was the wheel rim breaking and slamming into the rear bogie, a wheel assembly on the train's undercarriage that helped steer it on the tracks. Investigators were fairly certain that the broken wheel was key, that somehow it had set off a lethal chain of events, which led to the journey's catastrophic end. But there were many questions still to be answered. What had caused the wheel to fail in the first place? Was it possible that it had slammed into something on the track? Investigators examined the area where the wheel had fallen apart and quickly ruled out that scenario. There was no sign of anything on the track, except the small pieces of debris that had come off the train. So was it possible that there'd been a fatal flaw in the wheel itself? This was a key question. It was important to know whether the crash was one tragic isolated incident, or whether similar wheels were putting other trains at risk. When investigators dug into the wheel's history, they discovered that Germany's intercity express trains had been controversial ever since they first hit the track in the early 90s. In the beginning, ICE trains were equipped with something called the monoblock wheel.
Well, a monoblock wheel is made of cast steel. It's one piece. If you hit it with a hammer, it'll ring like a bell.
Monoblock wheels are similar to the wheels on other high-speed trains around the world, like those in Japan and France. But when German rail executives took test journeys on the first ICE trains, they were less than impressed. The monoblock wheels created vibrations, an uncomfortable ride.
So the thinking was, what could be done to solve the problem?
Professor Hans-Jürgen Kuhlwetter used to work as a lawyer for the Federal Department of Railways.
I myself once rode in such a train, and when you were traveling at more than 120 kilometers per hour, you could feel a vibration in your diaphragm that made you sick, and the car would be empty in minutes because the passengers went to another car.
The rail executives had been very disappointed with those vibrations. High-speed trains were supposed to compete for business with air travel. Customers might pay extra for speed, but only if they also got comfort.
When those loud noises were detected, executives from the railway management who were sitting on the train evidently then exerted a lot of pressure and demanded an immediate solution.
One solution would have been to replace the train's steel spring suspension with air suspension. But the manufacturer was not equipped for such a massive overhaul. It would have meant retooling the factory at great cost. Instead, the railway chose a simpler and less expensive solution. In 1992, intercity express trains were fitted with a different kind of wheel, the resilient wheel.
The wheel consists of an inside disc, a layer of rubber elements, and a wheel rim.
It works like this. The steel disc forms the center of the wheel and attaches to the axle. Chunks of rubber are inserted between this part of the wheel and the outer steel wheel rim to create a cushion effect. The rubber absorbs vibrations, so even at speeds of more than 200 kilometers per hour, passengers enjoy a smooth, comfortable ride. While it was the first time that resilient wheels were used on high-speed railways, the technology was not new.
Resilient wheels were commonly used and still are commonly used on light rail applications, on streetcars, trams. They're very useful because they do dampen out vibrations, they dampen out noise, and this is important when you're operating a streetcar through a residential area. People don't want their windows rattled every time a tram goes by.
Trams in Germany, like these in Hanover, have been equipped with resilient wheels for decades. But trams aren't supposed to travel for long distances, or at speeds of 200 kilometers per hour. Intercity express trains are. So how does speed and distance affect wheel wear? That's the kind of thing they study here, at the Fraunhofer Institute in Darmstadt, Germany, where they put wheels through their paces on a high-tech test rig. They spin at up to 350 kilometers per hour and can be subjected to high pressure from both the top and the sides.
Aim of the test rig is that we are simulating the operational usage of a real train.
Ulrich Wessling is one of the engineers in charge at the institute.
So you go, with high-speed trains, you go up to the technical limits, what is possible with the components.
Running at the technical limits, there is an increased danger of stress fractures in the rim of a resilient wheel. Because of the malleable rubber layer inside, the steel rim bends ever so slightly with each rotation. The higher the speed, the greater the stress. Over time, that leads to fractures that can be seen under a microscope. While the lines resemble timelines on the inside of a tree trunk, they are actually minuscule cracks that expand until they reach a breaking point. It's the same kind of fracture which occurred inside the wheel rim of the first carriage of ICE train 884.
This is the part of the wheel that broke.
State investigator Gunnar Bosse points to the outside surface of the wheel rim, which rode on the track. Then the inside, the part that was in contact with the rubber cushioning.
There's a continual crack originating from the inside of the carriage wheel, starting at the center and then growing in circles outward. It grew over a period of a few weeks until it cracked in this area spontaneously.
Nobody knows precisely how many kilometers a high-speed train has to travel for such a crack to develop. But it's possible to make an educated guess.
Professor Lange from the
University of Braunschweig analyzed the worn spot on the wheel very clearly and noted that most probably the starting of the crack, that is the first fracture, occurred some 10,000 kilometers earlier, and that the fracture kept expanding as the wheel continued to roll over several days or weeks.
Eventually, just before 11 on the morning of the 3rd of June 1998, the fracture in the rim cracked wide open. But one mystery remained. Why didn't the train leave the track as soon as the wheel split? Amazingly, it kept moving at high speed for more than 5 kilometers.
The wheel rim blasted off, the rubber elements flew away, and what remained was just the perforated wheel disc, which was grooved on either side and was therefore able to continue to roll on the rails.
So if the inner part of the broken wheel was able to roll for 5 kilometers, why not further? What exactly happened just outside Eschede to create such a catastrophe? There must have been something else that led to the accident itself. Could it have been the now demolished bridge? Clearly, it had played a role in the accident, but at what stage? Investigators discovered that the track through Eschede had been upgraded a few years earlier. At one time, passing motorists had crossed the track at ground level. But with the arrival of high-speed trains, the ground-level crossing was replaced with a bridge to make it safer for cars to cross the track. The bridge consisted of 3 sections of road decking, supported by concrete pillars. The pillars were placed just a few meters from the track, where trains roared through at high speed. Did this have something to do with the accident?
A good indicator of what might have happened was the fact that part of the train was on one side of the bridge and the head end of the train was on the other.
But had the train derailed at the bridge or before? When investigators examined the track, another clue fell into place. The 8 meters of metal that had skewered carriages 1 and 2 was in fact what remained of a guardrail. Guardrails are used to guide trains at points to help them switch smoothly onto a parallel track. Sure enough, the stretch of track at the bridge contained a series of points. At the first point, the broken wheel had caught on the guardrail.
The train was still traveling at a very high speed, 112 miles an hour, when the broken wheel struck this guardrail. The wheel struck the guardrail so hard that it actually pulled it up out of the track and broke it in half.
Und dabei ist dieser Wagen nach rechts.
With that, the rear bogie of the carriage derailed to the right. When the bogie reached the next turn point, it released a switch and destroyed it, so that all the following carriages were derailed.
In gerade Ausrichtung entgleist sind.
So 2 points had caused the derailment. The first had caused carriage number 1 to go off the track, and the next one had derailed the rest of the train. It was an unfortunate combination of events that led to the disaster. By itself, the broken wheel was a problem, but not necessarily deadly. But a broken wheel, combined with a series of points and a massive concrete structure, turned what might have been a small accident into a major catastrophe.
The bridge really made this a disaster. It really contributed to the severity of the accident. Trains, normally when we have train accidents, they don't hit anything so solid as this particular bridge. Trains are very massive and usually they can push whatever they encounter out of the way, whether it's trees, buildings, whatever. But with a concrete bridge coming down in front of the train, this train basically ran into a brick wall.
It was the last piece of the puzzle. Finally, investigators could explain exactly what happened to ICE train number 884 on that fateful morning in northern Germany. In the hours immediately following the tragic high-speed rail crash, investigators combed the scattered wreckage looking for clues. Anything that might have pointed to the cause of the accident that left 101 dead and many more wounded. Eventually, investigators concluded that it was a chain of events that had led to the disaster at the German town of Eschede in June 1998. A broken wheel on carriage number 1, a series of points in the track, and finally, a reinforced concrete bridge that made a bad situation much worse. They had the information to recreate the whole incident as it had unfolded. The 3rd of June, 10:57 in the morning, ICE train number 884 was traveling toward the town of Eschede at 200 kilometers per hour. Suddenly, passengers at the front of the train heard a loud noise and the cars started to shake. The wheel rim on the rear bogie of carriage number 1 had just broken apart. The wheel rim got caught in the bogie, damaged the train's undercarriage and ripped the floor of carriage number 1. Despite the broken wheel, the train kept moving at high speed for another 5.5 kilometers until it reached a series of points. At the first point, the broken wheel caught on the guardrail and ripped it out of the track. The 8-meter-long piece of steel then pierced the floor of carriage number 1. The rear end of carriage number 1 veered off to the right, and at the next point, the rest of the train came off the track.
The ICE ran here along this track, the same on which this train is passing right now.
The lead locomotive was all that stayed on track. It decoupled automatically from the rest of the train and travelled 2 full kilometers before coming to a stop. Even though the rest of the train had come off the rails, it had been moving with such speed that its momentum kept it going. Carriages 1 and 2 passed under the bridge and came to rest a few hundred meters on the other side of it.
And the third car hit the bridge pillars, demolishing them, and then the bridge started tumbling down.
Carriage number 3 was damaged from hitting the bridge, but it too came through. And the train was still moving so fast that carriage number 4 made it as well. The real catastrophe started with carriage number 5. From there on, the train was doomed.
Carriage number 5 went through the bridge sideways. You can see here how the road section from the bridge hit the roof at an angle. That made the roof cave in and finally crushed the back half of carriage number 5 completely, right down to the floor.
When the bridge collapsed, the rest of the train had nowhere to go but straight into it.
The rest of the train, starting at car number 6, folded like an accordion against the bridge. Here, you have the front end of carriage number 6. Carriages 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as well as the rear engine, followed in the same way.
One of the most tragic rail accidents in history took less than 5 seconds to unfold. A few seconds that changed the lives of its passengers forever.
In carriage number 12, Mr. Bauch was sitting in the rear section of the car.
Udo Bausch was in a coma for 17 days. He suffered a fractured skull and broken bones in his face, shoulders and legs. During those 17 days, he underwent 6 major operations.
I spent months in pain, getting up in the morning in pain, falling asleep at night in pain. And when the doctors finally found suitable painkillers for me, I felt like a new person.
But the crash of ICE 884 has left Udo with permanent injuries. He still hasn't been able to go back to work. But life hasn't been all bad for this survivor. He has a new daughter, and her godfather is none other than Andreas Effenhausen, the policeman who saved Udo's life. Together they visit the memorial to those who lost their lives on that sunny June day in 1998. Many of the rescuers are still suffering too, from post-traumatic stress so severe that their lives are horribly changed. Pastor Stallman has counseled some of them.
He said, in every night, all the dead bodies I had to collect, they stand at my bed. I'm not able to sleep anymore with light switched off.
The accident resulted in a trial. 3 engineers were charged with manslaughter and causing bodily harm through negligence. They were accused of putting the resilient wheel into service with insufficient testing. While they were ordered to pay fines of 10,000 euros each, they were never actually convicted. Today, intercity express trains are no longer equipped with the resilient rubber-cushioned wheels.
Und mittlerweile fahren diese Züge wieder mit den vollen.
These trains are running once again with monoblock wheels, but with a bogie that is different from the previous one that was on the train.
Und dieses Drehgestell, was heute verwendet wird, ist
The bogie in use today is air suspended, thus overcoming the vibration.
mindert dadurch oder vermeidet dadurch diese Vibration.
Intercity express trains once again rush through Eschede without stopping. But the people of Eschede and all across Germany will never forget that tragic day. Six years after the trip that derailed his life, Udo Bausch is again traveling by train. He even takes the line between Hanover and Eschede when he visits the man who saved him. Riding the stretch of track that changed both their lives forever.